Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. It was a loaded slate of hoops. Most teams in the association were in action, but there are two teams I want to focus on primarily in this video before we talk about some of the other games. One of those teams has looked like the best team in the league so far. They're blowing people out, have had an incredible start to the year after an amazing offseason. Many people's pick to win the Eastern Conference. It's the Boston Celtics, and the other team is moving rapidly in the other direction, looking like probably the worst team in the league so far. They currently don't have a win, and things may not be getting better anytime soon. That team is the Memphis Grizzlies. We're going to focus on them, and then, like I said, we'll shift into some of the other games. Let's start off with the Celtics. Last night, they played the Indiana Pacers, who've been really fun to watch so far. They've been a run and gun type of offense, whether it's off a make or a miss. They're pushing the ball up, trying to get some early shot clock looks, knocking down threes. Tyrese has looked amazing to start the season. Bruce Brown has looked like a great addition. They look like they've got more depth. It feels like they could be a team that takes a jump in the Eastern Conference, which me and many others were predicting going into the year. I've had a lot of fun watching the Pacers, but they're facing kind of a buzzsaw in the Celtics, who just annihilated the Wizards, and they were without their best player in Tyrese Halliburton. When he hasn't played, they've looked dramatically worse over the past two seasons, and that was again the case because not only did they lose to the Celtics, they got blown out. They lost by 51 points, the largest margin of victory by any team in the league so far this season, and part of that was because the Pacers just looked disjointed without Tyrese out there. But I think it was more so because the Celtics are unbelievable. This game was a 17-point game by the end of the first, over a 20-point game by halftime. In the fourth quarter, none of the Celtics starters even played, and they still won the quarter by 13 points. It was unbelievable. An amazing effort from Boston, who continues to look like maybe the best team in the world. I picked them to win the Eastern Conference. I picked them to win the NBA Finals for a number of reasons that they're showing right now. They've just got so much more talent than a lot of other teams in the league. I mean, that starting lineup has been unbelievable so far. It's an incredibly balanced offensive attack, both in terms of scoring and playmaking. I love the way the offense has looked. I think Joe Mazzulla has these guys playing a great brand of basketball. Guys are just knocking down shots ridiculously efficiently. They're getting open looks. They've been cooking out there. Jason Tatum has been the best player for them so far. He was their leading scorer against the Pacers tonight, putting up a pretty solid stat line of 30 points, 12 boards, and 4 assists in just 27 minutes on the season. Also their leading scorer, 29.8 points per game on 56% shooting from the field, 40.6% from three. He's also taking more mid-range jumpers here and there, which he's knocking down at a solid rate so far. Jaylen Brown's been putting up 22.5 points per game on nearly 50-44 splits. Porzingis is putting up 18.8 points per game on nearly 56% shooting from the field and 45% from three. Derek White's putting up 15.8 points per game, 64% shooting. Jrue Holiday, 13 points on 54% shooting too. Like, this whole starting lineup has been unbelievably efficient, and part of that is just the way they're sharing the ball, they're moving things, the amount of talent that just works so well alongside each other. The overall team playmaking has been really fun to watch too. Nobody on this team is like the clear ball handler or playmaker out there. Obviously, like Jrue Holiday and Derek White are their best players in that regard. But if you take a look at the assist totals, Jason Tatum, 4 assists per game. Kristaps Porzingis has 1.5. Jaylen Brown is 2.3. Derek White and Jrue Holiday both have about 4. Derek White's the leader with 4.3. It's a balanced offensive set. Like, they don't have one guy that's doing a majority of the setting up for everyone, because everybody in that starting lineup is capable of both creating a shot for themselves or creating a shot for others if they need to. They've been running great actions with Kristaps Porzingis out there, who's been such a seamless fit, knocking down threes from deep. He's shooting 5 attempts per game as a 7-footer. He's been great defensively too, putting up 1.5 blocks per game, and that goes alongside the defense of this unbelievable backcourt between Derek White and Jrue Holiday. Tatum has looked like one of the best players in the world so far, making an early case to win MVP as the clear lead guy on this really stacked team that feels like it could end up being by far the best team in the Eastern Conference. The Celtics have just looked unbelievable so far. If we take a look at their full team stats, they've been the 7th best defense, the 2nd best offense, and a net rating of 20.1, which is almost double the Clippers, who are currently in 2nd place. They've been the best team in the world. This Celtics squad is just stacked with talent. And I saw a lot of people before the year, for some reason, doubt the Celtics, feel like it wouldn't work right away, which I thought it might take some more time to gel than this. But it was pretty clear that from the get-go, these Celtics were going to be ready to execute at a high level, and that they were ready to take the NBA and the Eastern Conference by storm. I thought the Bucks would also be up there in conversation with them at the top of the East, which has not been a pretty start for the Bucks so far. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But so far, the Celtics have just been completely dominant. They also destroyed the Wizards in their last game. Before this one, it was a 19-point win, which it was never really that close. They were just blowing this thing out of the water by the end of the first quarter. They won the first quarter 42-19. The Wizards aren't very good. I mean, they were starting Kyle Kuzma at the center spot against Kristaps Porzingis out of all people. But even still, it's just looked like the Celtics don't really have an equal in the Eastern Conference at the moment. They're filled with talent. That starting lineup, like I said, has been lethal. The depth, I think, is held up pretty well. It's still not amazing, but when you're destroying teams the way that the Celtics are, you don't really need that much depth because the starters can just annihilate basically anybody in their path. In fact, their starting lineup of Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Derek White through these 4 games in 72 minutes has an offensive rating of 126, which is unbelievable, and then a defensive rating of 88.7. They have a net rating of 37.3, meaning that they're outscoring opponents by an average of 37.3 points per 100 possessions when those starters are out there. This lineup just has so much versatility. It has defense, it has great shot creators, distributors, it has shot makers, 3-point shooting, inside scoring, everything in between. The Celtics, just that starting lineup in particular, doesn't really have a flaw whatsoever. They've been amazing to start the season. Like I said, I picked them to win the East and I thought they'd be good, but they've looked even better than I expected. Really, the only game that was super close was the one against the New York Knicks. Against the Heat, it was a bit shaky here and there, but they won pretty comfortably by the end. Against the Knicks, they were up big and ended up blowing it. But for most minutes the Celtics have played so far this season, they've looked very clearly like the better team against everybody that they've played. They've got some tougher games coming up on the schedule, which I'm really excited to see. But at this point, the Celtics, I'm ready to say, are probably the best team in the Eastern Conference. We can talk about the NBA as a whole because the Nuggets have also looked really good. But so far, they're one of 2 undefeated teams. And I think that could be the case for quite a while with the way these Celtics are playing. Meanwhile, in the other conference and on the other side of the equation, you've got the Memphis Grizzlies, who up to this point as I'm recording are the only winless team in the entire NBA, sitting at 0-5 after getting blown out by the Utah Jazz last night, being down 23 in the first quarter and losing by 33 points at halftime. This game was never close, which has been the case for a number of Grizzlies games so far this season. They've looked terrible, and we knew it could be a slow start to the season for the Grizzlies with Ja Morant dealing with that 25-game suspension, Brandon Clark being out for a majority of this season with that Achilles injury, having to gel Marcus Smart into this team, having to rely a lot on him, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. in the absence of Ja Morant, and even more so now that Steven Adams is gone for the full year announced right before the season. Like, it seemed like it was going to be a slow start, but this has been something especially bad. They look completely lost on both ends of the court offensively, without Ja Morant's ability to get downhill, penetrate inside, play make for others, without Steven Adams' screening ability, Brandon Clark's energy. Without all those things, they have been the worst offense by far in the league. It's really not even that close. They've looked like a disaster. They just can't get anything going whatsoever. Desmond Bane has been trying his best. He's been good so far, albeit somewhat inefficient, which is to be expected for a guy that's playing a much bigger role than typical. Jaren Jackson Jr. has been really bad offensively. Part of that, I think, is Ja Morant not being there to set him up for some shots, not being able to take pressure off of him, but also Jaren's having to play a lot of small ball 5, which he's just really not built for at this point in his career. He's fantastic as a 4, but as a 5, he just gets into foul trouble and is unable to stop a lot of those bigger guys. Zaire Williams hasn't done great stepping into that starting small forward role. I don't know if he's the answer. Even when Ja comes back, I assume they'll probably go small ball with Ja, Marcus Smart, and Desmond Bane, which I don't know if that's going to work because you're already kind of small without Steven Adams out there. Like, when Ja comes back, he's going to fix some of these issues, but without Steven Adams out there to screen for him, to grab offensive boards, without any front court depth, Santi Aldama's also been hurt, Luke Kennard's been hurt, everything just feels bad. The Grizzlies have been not even just bad offensively, defensively, where Ja Morant isn't even really going to help them. They've been a bottom 10 defense in the league. And part of that is the bad offense. When you're bad offense, you're going to, give up turnovers. You're going to allow teams to get out and transition and run. You're going to get beat that way. Plus, you're getting blown out. You don't care as much about the defensive end. So I think the defense will get better if the offense improves even slightly, but I'm not really confident that the offense is ever going to get to a serviceable point even when Ja comes back. The half-court offense has always been an issue for them. It's even more so now with Steven Adams hurt, these front court depth issues. They've held up without Ja Morant in the past, but they just don't have the personnel at this point to do so. And that's led to them, again, being 0-5, the only winless team in the league, and it being really bad in a lot of their losses. Their schedule does get a little bit easier coming up. They play the Blazers a couple of times, the Heat, who have been bad so far, although it's still the Miami Heat. They could beat you on any given night. They've got a chance against the Jazz to redeem themselves, although the Jazz have been kind of monsters at home so far. But then they have like the Clippers, the Lakers, the Spurs, who have looked solid so far, the Celtics, the Rockets, who, the Dillon Brooks revenge game, the Suns, the Timberwolves. There are still some really tough games in here, even though it does get a little bit easier. And so far, I don't have confidence that the Grizzlies are going to beat any of these teams because they have been the worst team in the league so far. It's a disaster. And sure, when Ja comes back, it might look a lot better, but I don't have confidence that it's ever going to look great. And it doesn't matter if you go like 9-16 or something even worse in your first 25 games without Ja Morant. The Western Conference is really deep. There are a lot of teams that are going to be battling for those top 10 spots. If you go in a big hole early on the start of the season, I don't have confidence the Grizzlies can come back. There's a real chance that they might not just miss the playoffs. This Grizzlies team could miss the play-in entirely if things keep going this way. They've got to find a rhythm with these upcoming games. They need to figure something out. I don't know what it is, but they've got to figure it out fast, or this Grizzlies team might end up being the biggest disappointment of the entire season. Moving to some other games, Lakers-Clippers, a classic game. These late night, like intra-division Pacific matchups, which we have with Lakers-Clippers and Kings-Warriors, which we'll talk about in a bit, always seem to be incredible games. This one was no exception. Went to OT, Clippers up big in the first half. Lakers storm back, take a big lead at the end of the fourth, but then Paul George, who has been on a mission to start this year, brings the Clippers back, hits 3 clutch free throws to send this game to overtime. D'Lo misses the 3 right at the buzzer to try and win it. In overtime, Paul George would end up fouling out, same thing with Norman Powell, and the Lakers take this one 130-125, mainly behind the play of LeBron James, who was unbelievable in this one, played 42 minutes, so I guess so much for that minutes restriction. 35 points, 12 boards, 7 dimes, 27, 10, and 3 from Anthony Davis in 48 minutes. Like I said, D'Lo was great, 27, 2, and 6 in his 36 minutes. Christian Wood has been great for this team so far, had the big putback dunk to steal this one, 10 and 11 from him with some good defense. On the Clippers side of things, again, it was mainly Paul George for a majority of this game, 35, 6, and 1. He's been on a mission playing some of his best hoops. Kawhi had a 38, 6, and 5 game. He looked great. Russell Westbrook, 24, 11, and 8 with 4 steals. Did have some rough turnovers in there, but ultimately, pretty good game for Russ. This Clippers team was depleted a little bit in the front court because of the James Harden trade, but they still held their own against the Lakers on a second half of a back-to-back. If Kawhi, PG, and Russ keep playing like this when James Harden comes into town, they are absolutely terrifying. Meanwhile, for the Lakers, big win to get. They needed this one to get some momentum. LeBron and AD are still incredible. If they can keep getting some somewhat consistent play from the role players, they could be pretty good this season and turn things around after a very roller coaster first few games. Meanwhile, the Kings and Warriors played another classic game, which always seems to be the case when these two teams battle. Domantas Sabonis led the way for the Kings with 23, 11, and 8, hitting a huge bank mid-range jumper to give them the lead pretty late in the fourth quarter, but the Warriors were able to battle back because Klay Thompson hits a mid-range jumper with 0.2 seconds left to go, giving them the win 102-101. Big win for the Warriors as they continue to push. 4-1 so far on the season. They look way more cohesive than last year, both offensively and defensively. Feels like the Warriors are back. Steph has been great so far. Chris Paul has struggled to hit shots, but had 8 dimes. They've been able to hold their own due to some of their depth with Steph Curry off the court. Just great play so far from the Warriors, who feel like one of the West's better teams. The Kings, again, no De'Aaron Fox, some pretty good fight from them. Hopefully he's able to come back soon because he's a big part of everything they do out there, specifically in those fourth quarter clutch moments. Wrapping up the rest of the slate, the Raptors get a big blowout win over the Bucks. Scotty Barnes has looked the part of an all-star this season. He's been amazing. The Bucks, meanwhile, continue to struggle. Not great to start this season. The chemistry feels a bit off. Dame only had 9 shot attempts, which can't be the case for Damian Lillard. They have to figure out how to get him and Giannis both equally involved. They've got to use Dame more. Part of that is just going to come with time, but I'm a bit worried about the way that Adrian Griffin has schemed this team so far, so we'll keep an eye on the Bucks. Might be a video coming out about their struggles at some point soon if they keep up. The Blazers get a 110-101 win over the Pistons. Shaedon Sharpe has been their best player so far. The breakout year is in full effect for him. He's been great. Really excited to see what he continues to do. The Hawks are starting to build some momentum after beating the Bucks and now being the Wizards 130-121. Starting to find the rhythm a little bit here in the early season. The Nets get a 109-105 win over the Heat. The Heat have been abysmal to start the year, now moved to 1-4. Just can't seem to get anything going. Really inconsistent offense. Not a lot of depth all around. Point guard play has been kind of weak from Kyle Lowry. Jimmy Butler has not been great. not a good look so far from the reigning Eastern Conference champs. The Cavs get the revenge on the Knicks on the second half of these back-to-back matchups, with Donovan Mitchell leading the way with 30 points. The Pelicans come back from down 22 against my Oklahoma City Thunder on national television. Zion, big reason for that. CJ McCollum balled out too, getting a big win without Brandon Ingram. Like I said, making a massive comeback too. For us, we just kind of fell out of what we were doing in the first half, lost our rhythm and really never got it back. Shea had a chance to go ahead and win this one, pretty close to the final buzzer, but ends up missing the three. The Rockets get their first win of the season, 128-119 against the Hornets. Shout out to Dillon Brooks, has probably been the Rockets' best player so far after a lot of people clowned him in the offseason, clowned the Rockets to signing him to that contract. He's been great. The Timberwolves hand the Nuggets their first loss of the season, 110-89. Holding that crazy Nuggets offense to 89 points, really impressive. The Timberwolves defense has been the best in the league so far. We'll see if they can keep that up. The Mavericks hand the Bulls another loss. Luka does his thing, not his best performance, but does enough to get them the win without Kyrie Irving. Grant Williams has been great so far for them. And yeah, that's all the games that happened on tonight's slate. Let me know what your favorite performance was of the night. What were your biggest takeaways? How do you feel about Boston and Memphis? Do you think that they're going to keep their respective trajectories going? Can Boston be the best team in the East? Are they going to win the Eastern Conference? For the Grizzlies, are they going to be one of the worst teams in the West when Ja comes back? Can he fix this thing? Or are they just kind of doomed? Let me know all that down below in the comment section. Also, leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. Helps the channel out a ton. But yeah, I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.